The next call is a split call. Jan Logie, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to take a short call on behalf of the Green Party on the Health Protection Amendment Bill, which is relatively simple and is made up of 2 parts, in effect. One part of the bill is to strengthen the range of infectious diseases that are considered notifiable, and to give the Medical Officer of Health more options in terms of contact tracing for when people have an infectious disease that is on that list. And I would like to speak briefly specifically to the fact that chlamydia, which is New Zealand's #1 sexually transmitted infection, has finally been added to this contact or notifiable disease list. And I think that is well overdue. And has been mentioned by one of the earlier speakers, particularly because that is an infection that quite often has no symptoms, so that people may not realise that they have the disease to prompt them to, or the infection to prompt them to go to the doctor. So once somebody has a diagnosis, it will be very helpful for us as a society to put the motions in train for the people that they've had sex with to be able to be told that they're at risk and to go and get checked. So that is very good news in this bill. And I would just like to commend the contribution that my colleague Kevin Haig made earlier in this debate and through this process, and mention again to the House his experience in this area as the previous head of the AIDS Foundation, and his experience of working with people in the community who were HIV positive and were engaging in risky behaviour and were not wanting to change that behaviour, and the very few options that he found available to him. And that really the advice he was given was that that it could lead to the Medical Officer of Health intervening and detaining those people indefinitely with very few checks on their human rights or balances on that power. And that certainly in this day and age is far too extreme an option, and is not conducive to providing the environment of good public health that will enable people to come forward and get tested in the first place. We need to have that range of options to support people to come forward and enable more people to know that they should be tested. So the Green Party absolutely supports this part of the bill, though we would like to have seen the Public Health Amendment Bill also back on the table for more holistic changes and more changes across the spectrum to update our practice in that area. The Green Party, though, does not support the government's decision in relation to sunbeds, which is the other significant part of this bill. And we've joined with other opposition parties in expressing that the government has said that they will ban the use of sunbeds for those under 18, whereas the World Health Organisation's evidence was very clear that they classified sunbeds as carcinogenic in 2009. And that the evidence is very clear that use of a sunbed before the age of 35 will increase your risk of getting melanoma by 75%. There is no place for these beds of death in our society. We have too higher rates of melanoma as it is. Too many people are affected by this, and the evidence that came before the committee was that the industry is not following the existing regulations as it is, that there are still people in this industry who deny a link between the use of sunbeds and cancer, and that in fact there was a provider who apparently came in front of the committee and presented a couple of reports that they'd found on the internet to say that there was no link. So if people are that out of step with the science and that willfully ignoring the harm to people, I think that is a clear indication that the government needs to step in and protect people. And the government has failed, sadly, to do that in this case.
I call